Receptors in breast cancer, what is important, especially for subclassifications, is that number one, you look at the estrogen and progesterone receptor. The estrogen receptor is a very important diagnostic determinant. It occurs around 70 to 75% of invasive carcinomas. Progesterone receptor is regulated by the estrogen receptor, and both the presence of your estrogen receptor and your progesterone receptor are expressed in breast cancers and can serve both as diagnostic and prognostic biomarker. It can predict for behavior, it can predict for responses to treatment. The higher expression of your progesterone receptor is associated with overall survival, time to recurrence, and time to treatment failure or progression. However, lower PR levels or progesterone receptor levels are associated with aggressive course of disease, poorer recurrence, and prognosis. The HER2 new expression is a human epidermal growth factor, and it occurs to as high as around 25% of breast cancers that we encounter in the clinic. It is very relevant in terms of choice of treatment, and overexpression is actually one of the earliest events during breast carcinogenesis. An amplification in your HER2 results to an overactivation of the proto-oncogenic signaling pathways, resulting to uncontrolled cell growth. And this, the presence of HER2 new expression plus 3, corresponds to worse clinical outcomes, and it also correlates with a significantly shorter disease-free period. Another important marker that we also take into consideration as clinicians is your Ki67. This marks cellular proliferation and provides information on how fast a tumor might grow. The higher the Ki67, the more it reflects the aggressive nature of the cancer, along with the response to treatment and time to recurrence. So, aside from your ER, PR, and HER2 new, your Ki67 is also important or crucial in choosing appropriate treatment therapy and possible follow-ups for recurrence. So, high expression reflects lower survival rates. So, the need for molecular classification to categorize patients who may benefit from targeted therapy, hormonal therapy, and anti-HER2 therapy is very important for us doctors to give systemic treatments for patients with breast cancer. So, just to go back from a clinical point of view, luminal A, this is the type of breast cancer which in estrogen receptor is a very important diagnostic determinant. It is characterized by significantly high ER expression as opposed to the other subtypes versus luminal B, HER2 enriched, or triple negative. Triple negative is a subtype of breast cancer wherein there is a lack of expression of any of the above receptors. So the question comes up: when is chemotherapy really necessary? Traditionally, it has been known that the larger the tumor, the higher the stage, the higher the tumor grade, because it's more rapid in growth, these patients will require chemotherapy. Nowadays, we use the receptor status like hormone receptor positive cancers. We do realize that not all the time do they need chemotherapy. And the presence of very high expression of your ER and PR will really tell us that we need to reduce the need for chemotherapy for this type of patients. So before going on to patients who don't need chemo, who are the patients who need chemo? For luminal B, and this occurs in 10 to 20% of our tumors, it is higher grade and worse prognosis than luminal A. You might have an ER positive and a PR negative patient, but with a high expression of Ki67, more than 20%, then you know hormonal treatment alone will not suffice. It might benefit from hormonal treatment, but it has to be done along with chemotherapy. So usually this type of luminal B patients, they might be positive for ER and PR tumors, but their Ki67 will be higher and endocrine treatment alone will not suffice. This type of tumors have the worst prognosis, and yes, they do benefit from hormone therapy and chemotherapy compared to that of the other variant, your luminal A. HER2 positive group is an aggressive and fast-growing subgroup of breast cancer. They grow faster than luminal ones. For the past 20 or 30 years, your prognosis have improved with the introduction of very specific targeting for this HER2 positive group of breast cancer patients, and they do have a high response for chemotherapy. We need specific drugs against HER2 new breast cancer in the form of trastuzumab, trastuzumab combined with other medications, pertuzumab, tyrosine kinase inhibitor, plus of course surgery and treatment with chemotherapy. For this type of patients, visceral metastasis is very common. Bone localization is also a common source of dissemination. Then you have your triple negative breast cancer who don't have any markers for ER, no PR, and no HER2/neu. This is usually common for women under 40 years of age, and unfortunately this presents aggressive behavior. And these are the type of breast cancer patients who might present with BRCA1 and BRCA2. They present as aggressive breast cancer, they relapse early, they have a greater tendency to present in advanced stages. This type of breast cancer will definitely respond to chemo. Now, luminal A is the type of breast cancer that, chemo doesn't necessarily play a big role. You have a high expression of PR, you might have the absence of PR or HER2/neu, and your Ki67 might be low. So clinically, our patients will present as low grade, very slow growing. They have the best prognosis with less incidence of relapse and higher survival rate. They have high response rate, or they have very good responses to hormone therapy like tamoxifen or aromatase inhibitors with limited benefits to chemo. So there are instances where chemo might not really play a big role for luminal A types of breast cancer. They relapse more at the bone level. They have lower rates of spread or metastasis to the visceral area in their CNS. The European Society of Medical Oncology recommend additional tests for this type of breast cancer. They use genetic platforms to establish which patients would benefit from adjuvant chemo only if needed, based on the risk of relapse and survival rate. So to summarize, what we're looking at really are patients with luminal A. You have a high ERPR expression, you have a negative HER2/neu, and you have a low proliferative rate in the form of a low Ki67. These are times wherein chemotherapy is not the first option. So it's very important to know the subtype of breast cancer so that we can establish the best treatment option. And we know that compared to how breast cancer was viewed probably 30 or 40 years ago, gene expression studies have shown that breast cancer is very heterogeneous, and this heterogeneity has a molecular basis. Hence, the earlier lecture of Dr. Cruz discussing a lot of the molecular basis for treatment response, for treatment prognostication for patients with breast cancer. So, to highlight luminal A, what we really give for this type of patients is hormone therapy because they do respond beautifully to shutting off the sources of estrogen and progesterone in our patients. So, this occurs 70% of all cases worldwide. We really have to individualize our treatment based on tumor stage, biology, menopausal status. They are very responsive to endocrine therapy. Targeted therapy, if the mutant gene is present, is a very good option. Sometimes, but not always, chemo might help. So, adjuvant endocrine therapy or hormonal therapy for the lay people is universal for patients with hormone receptor positive invasive breast cancer of any stage and HER2 status. It reduces the risk of local regional recurrence, distant mets, and contralateral breast cancer while importantly improving overall survival. So this is the guidelines that we follow for adjuvant endocrine treatment in hormone receptor breast cancers or early breast cancer. So first we have to look at whether they are postmenopausal. And if the patient has no negative disease or 1 to 3 positive nodes but low risk genomic signature or low risk biology, then if you add chemo, it does not further reduce recurrence rates compared to endocrine treatment alone. So these are the patients that we don't need to give chemotherapy anymore. So we can give tamoxifen followed by your AI or aromatase inhibitors followed by tamoxifen. So these medications are endocrine treatment, and this type of subset of patients do not benefit anymore from chemotherapy. On the other end of the other side of the slide, you will look at the premenopausal patients. So for premenopausal patients with node negative disease or 1 to 3 positive nodes and low-risk genomic structures or signatures, then adjuvant chemo did not reduce recurrence rates compared to endocrine treatment alone. So even premenopausal patients might not need chemotherapy. And these are your luminal A-like stage 1 patients. For patients who have luminal A-like stage 2 to 3 or luminal B-like stage 1 to 3, then OFS, tamoxifen or OFS plus aromatase inhibitor might be an option. So, for systemic treatment of hormone receptor positive HER2 negative early breast cancer, we look at anatomic risk variables, but they do not influence the treatment sensitivity or benefit from adjuvant treatment. But if you do guide therapy selection, they can have a big impact on absolute risk reduction. So for higher risk hormone receptor positive tumors, aromatase inhibitor-based therapy is needed. If we would want to consider chemo or targeted treatment or extended adjuvant endocrine therapy for postmenopausal women, ovarian function suppression and chemotherapy, then we need to check all of these factors in our patient. So what about targeted therapy for hormone receptor positive HER2 negative breast cancer? For stage 3 or high-risk stage, and ideally we do need to check for BRCA1 and BRCA2 testing, and this was mentioned in the earlier lecture. If our patient is BRCA1 into wild type or untested, then a cyclin-dependent kinase 4/6 inhibitor in addition to endocrine treatment will benefit the patient. So the addition of abemaciclib for 2 years reduced the absolute risk of recurrence at 4 years by 6.4%. And this is very important for patients who present with more than 4 involved lymph nodes or 1 to 3 positive nodes with either a tumor of more than 5 centimeters, a grade 3 histology, or a K167 expression of more than 20%. For targeted therapy with BRCA1 and 2 mutation and high-risk HER2 negative, for stage 3 or high-risk stage 2, then we can give adjuvant olaparib for 1 year plus endocrine therapy, and this improves your disease-free survival and overall survival irrespective of the hormone receptor status. At 4 years, the absolute differences in DFS or disease-free survival and distant disease-free survival are 7.3 and 7.4% respectively. So, hormone receptor positive and HER2 negative patients will definitely need surgery as initial treatment modality. For women with larger tumors or clinical nodal involvement, we may consider systemic therapy either in the form of chemo or endocrine treatment. Your chemo can be effective for surgical downstaging of this type of patients, but we must remember that it is uncommon to get complete disappearance or complete pathologic response for this type of patients. So adjuvant endocrine therapy is universal for patients with hormone receptor positive invasive breast cancer, and endocrine therapy reduces the risk of local regional recurrence, distant recurrence, contralateral breast cancer, and improving overall survival. How about biomarkers? How do we try to apply the biomarkers that Dr. Cruz mentioned earlier? So for women with early stage breast cancer, especially those who are HER2 negative and ER positive, you will note that we try to classify the patients either premenopausal or less than 50 years old or postmenopausal or more than 50 years old. For premenopausal, node negative, then we try to use Oncotype DX. If you will note, Oncotype DX has a high quality of evidence and a very strong strength of recommendation. For postmenopausal women of more than 50 years old and there are no lymph nodes, then the option of Oncotype DX or MammaPrint, but MammaPrint has an intermediate quality of evidence with a strong strength of recommendation. For node-positive postmenopausal women with 1 to 3 nodes, then we do either Oncotype DX, MammaPrint, or Ki-67. So we apply the concepts lectured earlier in terms of Oncotype DX. For us clinicians, we use it to analyze the activity of group of genes related to breast cancer recurrence to help predict whether our treatment option of chemo will benefit the patient. So this is important if we get a low recurrence score, and this indicates that chemo is not needed and hormone therapy alone would be effective for this type of patients. On one end, for the MammaPrint test, the purpose is to evaluate the genetic makeup of the tumor to predict the risk of recurrence in early stage breast cancer. The importance of this test is that it uses estrogen receptor, HER2 negative breast cancer. It helps us decide whether chemo is necessary alongside endocrine therapy. So, to wrap it up, not all cases require chemo due to advances in personalized medicine. Why do these tests matter? Why is it important? Important in terms of treatment planning. The tests guide us whether hormone therapy alone will be effective or if chemo and other treatments are required. It tailors the response to treatment for personalized approach. Patients with hormone receptor positive tumors may benefit more from endocrine therapy, reducing the need for aggressive treatments like chemotherapy, sparing our patients from adverse events. Endocrine tests help us clinicians to tailor treatment plans. It helps us ensure that patients receive the most effective therapies with least toxicity. So thank you very much for the attention. I hope we have given you guys an idea of how we tailor our approach to patients with breast cancer. Team?
Thank you, Dr. Jean, for the clear and thorough lecture and explanation. We now proceed to our grand finale, our last lecture for this morning. Our last, but definitely not the least, of our lecturers, Dr. Benedict Crisostomo. He graduated from the University of the Philippines and also had his clinical internship and residency training in radiation oncology at PGH. He is a diplomate of the Philippine Board of Radiology in radiation oncology and also a fellow of the Philippine College of Radiology. He had his clinical observership in radiation oncology at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, USA. He is currently the clinical director of POCC Manila Med Radiotherapy Unit, and also an active consultant in Bicol Regional Hospital and Medical Center, as well as De La Salle University Medical Center, and of course, here at our institution. Please welcome Dr. Benny Crisostomo.
Good day, everyone. I am Dr. Chrysostom of the Department of Radiation Oncology, and I am here to shed a light on what is hypofractionation in radiation therapy for breast cancer. I have no conflict of interest to disclose, and I am currently an active consultant of the hospital. Here is an outline of my presentation, which I have tailored for our colleagues, healthcare staff, and trainees in the audience. I will focus on these questions on hypofractionated radiation therapy and its role in the treatment of breast cancer, and we will go by these questions one by one. So firstly, what are the indications of radiation therapy for breast cancer? Radiation therapy is a form of treatment delivered using high-energy X-rays, to put it simply, focusing on control of disease while sparing at-risk normal organs and thus minimizing side effects. In our specialty of radiation oncology, this treatment is typically done through two means. One is externally, or EBRT, where radiotherapy is delivered typically using linear accelerators or LINACs, such as those available here in our institution, the IMRT-capable Varian Unique and VMAT-capable Halcyon machine seen on the left. Radiotherapy may also be delivered internally in our patients' bodies through brachytherapy, which is occasionally used in breast cancer through balloons and catheters seen on the right. For this presentation, we will mainly focus on external beam radiotherapy. In the latest data available from the WHO Global Cancer Observatory, or GloboCan, we can see that breast cancer comprises roughly a third of all new cancer cases in the Philippines, with an increase in incidence from 27,000 in 2020 on the left here on the pie chart, going up to 33,000 in 2022 on the right. Among radiotherapy centers, breast cancer is one of the most common referrals we receive for treatment as well. Indications for radiotherapy and RT dosing in breast cancer depends largely on stage, histopath, and other patient features. Depending on whether neoadjuvant chemotherapy was done, radiotherapy is typically administered adjuvantly after surgery to statistically reduce recurrence rates, whether through breast-conserving surgery as seen on eggshell slices of RT plans on the upper right here, or RT may also be delivered after mastectomy as in the second image. Radiotherapy may also be indicated for symptomatic or palliative treatment of metastasis, hemorrhage, among others, as seen with the bone metastasis patient on the third image, but we will focus mainly on adjuvant treatment for this presentation. In the latest version of the US NCCN guidelines for patients who underwent mastectomy with surgical axillary staging, radiotherapy is indicated or at least considered for most cases depending on histopath results, as shown in the red box on the right. The same is true especially with high-quality category level 1 evidence in the setting of lumpectomy or BCS, given the evidence on the reduction of ipsilateral breast tumor recurrences among patients who receive adjuvant whole breast RT. Discussion of these treatments are best done in a multidisciplinary setting with all specialties involved. Locally, we also have national CPGs for breast cancer available from DOH, where adjuvant RT is recommended for both post-BCS and post-MRM settings. So with this backgrounder, let us now focus on fractionation and the role of fewer RT fractions or hypofractionation in breast cancer. For my patients, I typically orient them on fractionation on how we prescribe RT dose depending on each patient case and divide this dose into a number of days to reduce side effects, which is why RT sessions are called. Historically, increasing fraction number was found to reduce the severity of late side effects with the conventional radiotherapy techniques available at time plates on the right. However, with modern RT equipment, we are now able to safely deliver RT in as few as 1 to 5 fractions with stereotactic techniques that may be familiar for some in the audience. By definition, conventional fractionation is where we prescribe 1.8 to 2 gray per day, where a typical RT prescription for breast cancer consists of 25 fractions of 2 gray per day to a total dose of 50 gray. With hypofractionation, we lessen the number of fractions needed to achieve the total RT dose by delivering more than 2 gray or the same as 200 centigrade per fraction. This is a visual representation of the difference in total treatment duration for hypofractionated RT regimens, where we can see the fraction size being vertically higher as we lessen the number of fractions, seen here in green in the moderate hypofractionated row, going as extreme as 5 fractions in red here for ultra hypofractionation, where the vertical bars are much longer. We will go back to this particular slide frequently later, as this shows the various hypofractionated regimens studied by different trials. Seen above in green are schedules by the START-A trial where only 3 fractions are given per week with the same total 5-week duration as conventional. In the middle in blue are moderate hypofractionation schemes which lasts 3 weeks instead of 5. And lastly, below in orange are ultra hypofractionation regimens where only 5 fractions are given in as short as even a week only. For this slide, important to notice that the total dose on the right is lower as we decrease the treatment duration. such that 50 gray in 25 fractions does not become 50 gray when it's shortened to 15 fractions, and more so it's not equivalent to 50 gray in 5 fractions. So it goes down to as low as 26 gray in 5 fractions for the fast forward schedule. The decrease in total dose is explained by radiation biology, one of the disciplines within radiation oncology. Please bear with me just for this one slide, since this would explain our preference for hypofractionation for breast cancer. The key takeaway here is that the response of both normal and cancer cells to changing the daily RT dose is not linear, represented by this alpha-beta ratio coefficient. For other cancers, this ratio is much higher at 10 than normal cells which range from 2 to 3. This difference allows us to increase fractions conventionally to lessen normal organ effects. However, experimentally, the alpha-beta value of breast cancer was found to be at 2.8, well within the range of the alpha-beta ratio of normal organs as well, quite similar. So the problem here is that hypofractionation may cause more normal organ side effects. But these are now prevented with the modern RT techniques that allow us techniques such as cardiac sparing currently. So this behavior of breast cancer cells theoretically rationalizes the comparison of radiobiologic equivalent RT prescriptions here seen below, such as 50 gray in 25 fractions, which is equivalent theoretically to 40 gray in 15 fractions, versus 28.5 gray in 5 weekly fractions, where trials compared efficacy and toxicity profiles, to be discussed later. So going back clinically, away from the theoreticals, we will now look into contemporary trials that establish the role of hypofractionation for breast cancer. We will first look into the patient characteristics or inclusion of these trials, on whether they included BCS and mastectomy patients or both. Going back to this schema slide, the trials in the red box, mainly the START, Canadian OCOG, and FAST trials, explored hypofractionation mainly in the setting of breast-conserving surgery or lumpectomy. We already have long-term evidence for hypofractionation, as the OCOG or Ontario Clinical Oncology Group trial was completed in Canada in 1996, published in 2001, which explored hypofractionated RT among post-lumpectomy patients with node-negative breast cancer. Studies on hypofractionation are also common in the United Kingdom with their Nationalized Health Service, which standardized therapy schedules to 3 weeks instead of 5 through the START trials from 1998 to 2002. It was in UK where also they further explored the safety and efficacy of a 1-week RT regimen in the FAST and Fast Forward trials, which were completed in 2014. This table shows the characteristics of patients enrolled in these trials. It is important to note that most patients in these trials were treated with lumpectomy or breast-conserving surgery. However, it is quite known that the most common presentation of breast cancer in our country is locally advanced, necessitating mastectomy. Although there are certain percentages, less than 10% in the START A and B and Fast Forward trials that underwent mastectomy, seen here in the red boxes, we should also look into trials that investigated hypofractionation in the MRM setting. So far, there is one published trial from China which looked into a 3-week RT regimen, almost similar to the START and OCOG trials, but in the